Chapter 1. Doug. I never take selfies, but today feels special. Plus, I can text this selfie to my mother, knowing she hates everything about my workplace. At some point, I'll stop taking joy in upsetting my parents. But today, I grin and extend my arm, positioning the camera so Franklin Middle School's gorgeous stone entryway frames my face. Today was my last day of student teaching, which means tomorrow will be my first day getting paid to be here. Granted, I'm starting off in summer school, so I'm sure not making much. But as I told my family, teaching makes me happy. Lord knows why. Just as I snap the picture, I notice a group of preteens cheesing in the background, spoiling my shot. I whip my head around. "What are you two still doing here? Did you miss the bus?" They snort. "Duh, soccer practice." I scowl and glance down the block toward the athletic field. "Well, get over to practice then. Mr. Nesso's probably looking for you." Another snort as they start walking. "He probably don't even know we're gone." "It's doesn't," I holler at their backs, already feeling like their dorky English teacher. I chuckle when they flip me the bird, and try again for the selfie. This time, my smile feels more genuine.
"Mr. Rogers, may I speak with you?"
The smile drops from my lips when I hear the principal, Kelly Vanelli, approaching. Perpetually perky, Miss Vanelli ends every one of her sentences in an exclamation point. But she's also a keen observer, and I feel like I've been called to the principal's office. I clear my throat. "Yes, ma'am." She smiles. I clench my teeth.
"Mr. Rogers, were you unclear about Colton's meaning just there?"
"Unclear?"
"I couldn't help but notice you corrected his grammar."
I wince. Well, I'm an English teacher.
"Yes, you are, in a diverse school where we focus on cultural competency."
I sigh. She's reminding me how much more I still have to learn about this work. It feels like a strange thing to say since I came here to teach. I'm still finding my feet, I tell her, fiddling in my pocket. I grew up in a wealthy suburb where most people look the same and insist on the same sort of values. I majored in business because my parents told me to, because they expected me to, because my brother did. I could admit that I first switched to education despite them. It seemed like the best way to irritate my family, but still make sure I got some sort of job after college. Once I started my education classes, though, I felt like I was in the right place for the first time in my life. I felt like I had a direction, a path that led me to goofing around with a bunch of preteens all day long. Kelly smiles.
"In your shoes, I might have reassured Colton that Mr. Nesso always knows who is and is not present."
Nodding, I think about how hard it is to drill down to the important lesson in the moment. I focused on how Colton shaped his words, rather than emphasize that his teachers here always care and always see him. I'm not sure what to say in response, so I'm grateful when Kelly Vanelli fills the silence.
"I believe you'd better hurry if you're still meeting the graduate program director."
The last time Kelly Vanelli called me in her office, she suggested I start right away on my master's degree. The district has a lot of incentives in place to snag new teachers and keep us. Miss Vanelli wasted no time setting me up with some funding in exchange for a commitment to stay with the public schools of Pittsburgh. Of course, this means I'll be teaching summer school, taking my own summer classes, and teaching one course for the university to pay for it. I slap my pocket, where her signed forms are still nestled. Thanks for the reminder. I give her a grin and jog off for the bus toward campus. She waves me off as I climb aboard.
"See you Monday."
I arrive at the health sciences building with about 10 minutes to spare, but there's a student in the office already, so I lean against the wall in the hall, staring at the photos of nursing students and lab researchers. I hear the scrape of a chair against the floor in the office.
"You truly can't cut me a break with this?"
A female voice sounds agitated.
"I've been doing the work for this degree for years. I just need a freaking piece of paper."
I hear the woman make a gasping sound, like one of those almost crying hiccups. The department chair clears his throat. "Miss Peterson, in order for me to give you the piece of paper, as you so call it, you're going to need to complete your first-year composition course. There is no workaround for this requirement." I clench my teeth. Things sound heated in there as the female voice scoffs.
I've been charting vitals. I've read so many charts from the RNs. Do I really need to do book reports to get the job done?
Miss Peterson, I'm sorry. Rules are rules. You can take the composition course during the summer session and still finish your degree for August graduation. The student's response is softer now, muffled. I realize I'm leaning closer to the door to eavesdrop and pull myself together as the door flies inward. My eyes bulge out of my head a little when I see an enraged woman wearing blue scrubs storming out of the door in a blur of brown ponytail and tote bags. She's hot. I don't just mean her temper. I mean she's attractive as hell. For some reason, the rage really does it for me. The paper flyers taped to the walls flutter in the hallway as she streaks out of the building, and I have to take a deep breath to calm myself down. Ah, Mr. Rogers. Come in, come in. I whip my head back toward the open office door, where Professor Blee is seated behind a mountain of file folders. Doug, please, I say, pulling out my signed forms and taking a seat in the folding chair vacated by that hurricane of a woman. It's still warm from her ass. Lord help me. I need to focus on this meeting. Just stopped by to drop off the last forms for the teaching assistant gig. Professor Blee nods his head, reaching for the paper. Forgive me, your folder is somewhere in here. He gestures at the pile. I'll hunt for it while you tell me what you need to know in order to hit the ground running for the summer session. He begins sifting through the manila folders as I stare at him. Everything? Everything. Professor Blee looks up and raises his eyebrows. Were you not teaching English and composition to middle schoolers for your student teaching assignment? I nod. He smiles. Well then, you're all set. In response to my confused expression, he waves a hand. You're teaching first-year comp to nursing students, Mr. Rogers. Unlike most students at this university, they know exactly what they want to do upon graduation, and they know exactly what that job entails. He holds up a folder triumphantly and shakes it around, sliding my signed forms inside. Many of our teaching assistants find it useful to tap into our syllabus directory. We don't have a required textbook, but many choose to use this one. He extracts a book from the mountain on his desk and shoves it toward me. Then he turns to his computer as if I'm no longer in the room. I clutch the book to my chest as he types and then peers at me, confused. Was there something else? I shake my head, understanding a little better why that woman got so heated in here. I cram the textbook in my shoulder bag and catch a bus toward home. A few blocks later, I see the angry woman from before, her ponytail swishing behind her as she storms up the sidewalk. She's definitely still cute, despite the rage seeping out of her. Even through the crusty bus window, I can see she's exactly my type. Stubborn, determined, fiery. The bus turns just as I start to wonder if she's a biter in bed. Ah well, it's better that I didn't get a chance to make a move. I'm not going to have time for anything other than work this summer.
Chapter 2. Amy. One class left and I'll be a real nurse. Just one class. I feel like an old lady compared to the other students, though. 5 years shouldn't make such a difference. It's not like I'm 30 in a room full of teenagers, but I'm not just any 23-year-old in freshman comp. I already work full-time as an emergency room tech, and I already held my mom's hand as she died from cancer. I am not what you'd call a peer to these kids. I find a seat in the back of the classroom, kick my bag under my seat, and wonder how I'm supposed to swing 8 hours a week of summer school in between my 12-hour shifts at work. My boss offered to work around my schedule, but the reality is that I can't just walk off the floor if I'm elbows deep inside a trauma patient's chest wound. The other students in class must be able to sense my resentment at being here, because they are leaving a ring of chairs open around me like a buffer zone. Half of them already failed freshman comp the first time around and are trying to make it up before they end up like me. years too old to be steaming in a summer classroom. I pull out what's left of my laptop. The lid creaks as I open it, and I feel my cheeks flush, not wanting anyone to see the cracked screen. My brother Ryan didn't mean to drop it on the tile floor. I know that. But it doesn't change the fact that he did, and we can't afford to replace it. Even with all of us living at home and pitching in, Dad can barely keep the house. Mom's treatments totally wiped out their savings and dug Dad into a deep financial hole. I can limp along with this clunker until I get my degree. It's just a few weeks. I'll sleep when I'm old, I mutter as the teacher shuffles in. He immediately walks to the whiteboard and starts scratching out his name. I roll my eyes because his handwriting is worse than half the doctors I work with, and they at least have an excuse to be in a hurry. Doug Rogers, he scrawls. It's a douchey name. Doug. I vow to think of him only as Doogie as he turns and uses his index finger to shove his glasses up his nose. I squint at him because he looks familiar. But then he starts talking and I zone out. Blah, blah, the syllabus is posted already. Blah, blah, we'll write an essay a week. He abruptly stops talking and I stare at him. His eyes widen and he hesitates before rattling off more course policies. I rest my chin on my fist and try not to fall asleep. I worked from 7 until 4 and barely crammed food into my face before this class. I hope he doesn't keep us the entire 2 hours. Doogie holds up a spiral-bound bundle of papers. Good news, he says. Instead of a textbook, we'll be using this collection of essays I put together just for this class. You can pick this up at the campus bookstore. All around me, my classmates are popping gum and taking notes. I sit up, waiting for someone to point out that a custom print bundle means no ability to buy the book used or check it out from the university library. Nobody raises their hand. I sigh and do it myself. Doogie's face lights up and then his cheeks twitch like he's not sure what expression to make. Yes, you in the back. Question? Amy Peterson, I mumble. Did it occur to you that your custom bundle is the most expensive option for course materials? He frowns and looks down at the bundle. It's significantly cheaper than the standard first-year comp book most of the other classes used. I roll my eyes at him. Yeah, new. But most of the other classes use it, so it's easy to get a used one cheap. Doogie presses his lips together and frowns. I tap my nails on the desk, waiting to see what he's going to say. I'm not sure what he could say at this point. He obviously already ordered the copies. There's no going back now. Maybe I'm waiting for him to apologize. I don't even know anymore. Eventually, he clears his throat. I had not considered the resale value of the other textbooks, no, Miss Peterson. He's quiet for a beat and then continues. But as I said, this is a customized book just for this course. He smiles and looks around the room. I think you'll find the readings align with your interests as future nurses. My classmates perk up as doofus Rogers turns back to the board, writing out some nonsense with a squeaky marker. I was irritated at being here to begin with, and this is not helping. I felt like such a failure when I had to drop this class as an actual freshman. I know my mom would scold me for that attitude, and she'd want me to take a deep breath and move on. It's just one class, Amy girl, she'd say. I feel tears start welling when I think of my mom, when I think of how different my life is after her illness and death. I try to focus on the teacher, but my mood is darker than before. He asks us all to handwrite a few hundred words for him about what we expect to gain from this class and to tell him the last significant piece of writing we completed. My stomach growls audibly, and I rest a hand on my belly as I begin to scratch out my temper in my spiral notebook. I'm in this class to complete my final requirement for my BSN. That's what I hope to gain. The last thing of significance that I wrote was an email to my employer explaining that I once again could not meet the requirements for advancement because I still haven't completed my first year composition class. And on I vent for a few paragraphs. I scribble my name at the top of the page and noisily rip it out of my notebook. When Doogie collects the papers, he dismisses us for a 5-minute break. I walk out of the room, out of the building, and into the humid June air. I feel tears start welling, and I know I can't go back in there. Not today. Maybe I'm too tired from work. Maybe I'm just hungry. But I don't have it in me to finish this class tonight. I cross Fifth Ave and hop aboard the 71B bus toward home, knowing I probably fucked myself over already, but too exhausted to care. I walk in the door to a wreck, which I expected. Dad and Ryan are asleep on the couch with the baseball game blaring on the television. Judging by the noise, my brother Dan is up in his room, raging against a machine. And, of course, my baby sister Alice is trying to clean up. Her curly hair stands up all over the place as she furiously scrubs at a pan of something. I shake my head as I set my bag down on the floor, worried the towering stacks of dishes is going to crash down on Alice. "Why isn't anyone helping you with that?" I chide, hurrying to grab a towel and make some headway on the already washed pans so we've got some room to stack clean plates. "What happened to not having to wash up if you're the one who cooks?" Alice blows her hair out of her eyes and shrugs. She doesn't have to tell me that Dad's not the greatest at implementing systems to keep the house going. In the year since Mom died, I've been fully in charge of operations around here. But with me working full-time and going to school as well, I stalk over to the couch with my damp dish towel and whip it at Ryan's face. His eyes fly open and he swats his arm in the air. "What gives?" "Oh, it's you." He crosses his arms over his chest and tries to fall back asleep, but I whip him with the towel again, this time catching him right on the eyelid. "Ha!" I shout triumphantly as he flies off the couch, ready to fight. I shake my head. "You and Dan should be washing up. I'm sure you two didn't make dinner." He groans. "It didn't even taste good. Beans and some green shit." "Watch your mouth," Dad mutters in his sleep from the corner of the couch. Ryan sighs and walks to the sink where Alice happily steps aside. My stomach gurgles, and Alice's face lights up. "I'll fix you a plate." She's in motion before I can protest, and I sink into a stool at the counter, waiting for her to pull something amazing out of the microwave. Alice has aspirations of being a chef. She just finished up the culinary arts program at the high school VOTEC, but there's no money for her to go to culinary school for real. I try not to think about all my siblings' dreams on hold. At least Dan and Rye were able to leave high school with industry certifications from their tech programs. They both chip in a lot from their jobs. I'll be making almost twice as much as I am now once I get this damn degree. The hospital is as eager to hire me as a nurse as I'm eager to get the job. Things will improve. My sister sets a steaming plate of food in front of me on the counter, and I dig in. "Al, this tastes amazing." She doesn't have to tell me she made beans and greens because they're cheap. "What do you do to get all this flavor?" Alice leans forward on her elbows, beaming. "I got a bunch of bones from the meat counter to make the broth. No charge, and I splurged on a few different kinds of onions." "Onions are a splurge?" I wince, knowing the biggest expense right now is my tuition. I'm sure the stupid packet from my comp class will put us even deeper in the hole, if I'm still allowed in the class. Reading my face, Alice sits beside me. "You're home earlier than I thought. How was school?" "Shouldn't I be asking you that question?" Alice giggles. "Aim, it's June. You're the only nerd in summer school." There's a clatter from the sink and Ryan groans as bean-covered dishes slide into the water, splashing him. Alice and I laugh before we head over to help dig him out of trouble. I remind myself this is why I'm working myself ragged for the degree. This family right here is all I have. and we stick together. I can deal with Doogie the douche for a few weeks. I shovel the last bite of my dinner into my mouth and rinse my dish. I walk back into the living room and kiss my dad on the cheek. I'm heading up, I tell them. Dad grunts as I turn down the volume on the game. I kick Dan's door as I pass and he turns the volume down just in time for me to sink into bed. I'm asleep before I can even resume worrying about everything.